to yourself. I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me. I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about fire. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I'm the
Voidwalkers. Welcome to Lighting the Void. Broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void live. I believe it's Wednesday, November the 20th, 2024. And we're going back into the books again, man. Vera Stanley Alder, The Finding of the Third Eye. I can't wait to get deeper into this book. Keep in mind on this program, too, the idea as we move into the void is to not take on a set of beliefs really fast. You know, whether people are talking about the out-of-body experience, spirituality, science, metaphysics, the occult, technology, the paranormal, whatever you take on as a belief, according to William Buellman, could become a potential block in your experience. So I just want to remind everybody that there are some shows and channels and things that usually will validate your beliefs or teach you things, stuff like that. This isn't really one of those channels. We just explore and try not to take on a set of beliefs. However, if your experience sets a truth in your path, there's no getting around that, right? Like, that's up to you. So what's up, Dutchie, Ari the Cat, Yo Joe, that looks like the G.I. Joe motto, Lisa, Sir Wolf, Cosmic Sherry Ann, MJ, Susie, and Jane, and all the lurkers. All the lurkers out there. I don't know why Jesse I called when I was talking about when we were watching the Tyson fight. I called Jesse Susie for some reason. I don't know why Susie was in my head. But this is a short text according to remember, this book was written in 1968, and according to Vera Stanley Alder, her philosophy is about the development of our spiritual self and the third eye and what we're able to see as we get into that. Okay, this is according to her. Now, a lot of people ask me all the time, and so I'm doing my research. But a lot of people have asked me about Darius J. Wright. I've asked Darius to come on the broadcast, but I mean, let's face it, we're not one of the bigger channels here. I don't know how much good it's going to do him, but you never know. So I've been listening to the guy, and I guess this is the Darius right now would be the Billy Carson of the out-of-body experience. That's the way I look at it. A lot of the stuff that he's talking about, from what I've heard, is pretty spot on, actually. But keep in mind, too, that some of this stuff is hard to explain. So when he gets into, like, explaining the different levels of existence, the Akashic records, angels, and things like that, that is the only stuff that I hear from him that I'm like, you know. But as far as the methods, all of the techniques, the experiences of getting out of body, some of the tricks that he has, things like that, it all sounds spot on. But I want you guys to keep in mind this too. Like, I even heard him talking about, you know, these people that carry around tablets or these type of tablet things in these spiritual realms. Everything that most of the people that are teaching you OBE stuff, if you listen to the books by Buellman, Monroe, I would say probably Muldoon, and a few other books, if you just read them, there's not too much new stuff. You could repeat it. Just put your own spin on it, basically. There are some pretty cool tricks, though, some pretty cool stuff that he talks about, and I'm still doing my research on it, just so you know. So while I'm at work at job number 1, I've been listening to Darius' stuff so far. So far, so good. Sounds good to me. Now, let's get into the classifieds, how we're classified. The last time we talked about how humans or how we were classified, especially on a spiritual level, we were reading Manly P. Hall. Some of it was kind of insulting, though, wasn't it? I think so. Yeah, and by the way, yeah, Gareth's doing great. He responded to me again. He's still trying to get OBE. We're going to help him, definitely, for sure. So, this is chapter 5. And just listen up, go to sleep, whatever you want to do, chat in the chat room, talk about your cat. It's cool. Just hang out. So we're told that the attainment of wisdom and power can only be acquired through study and knowledge of ourselves, through inner study, right? So we've seen also that the same laws govern the whole universe, and that if man can understand some of the laws governing himself or the tiniest atom, he will have a clue to those which govern the solar systems and the greater system to which they belong. Scientists have discovered that an atom closely resembles a miniature solar system, and this leads us to the thought that perhaps our great solar system, in its turn, is one of millions of atoms forming the body of some great being, too vast for us to picture. And such a being might feel small compared to the world which he in turn finds surrounding himself. So yeah, we could be inside of a being that's inside of another being that's inside of another one that's inside of another one. Sure. I heard Joe Rogan talking about that one time. So let's get into this a little bit further. So the atoms, or the stars, forming the cells, the constellations of the body of this vast being would not appear to be far apart to him. Seen by him, they would be intimately connected with each other, there being strong chemical reactions and influences between them, just as with the cells in our own bodies. When an atom from one of our own cells is examined, it's found to be composed of a proton, or in the macrocosmic case, I guess that would be the sun, surrounded by various numbers of electrons. In the space case, that would be planets, all vibrating at set speeds. Now, we're told that the proton is so small a part of the atom that it can be compared with a bee buzzing inside a cathedral. So that if we could become small enough to cling to that proton, we should certainly feel as if we were clinging to a star in a mighty space. And it would be difficult to believe that our star was part of an atom in the cell of a very solid body. Some scientists now claim that the ether itself is denser than the planets that swing through it. So you see, I guess we must reserve ideas about solidity until we are a little better informed. This is all theory, by the way, observable theory. But the point made in this case is that through visualizing our vast giant, we can better understand the intimate relation in which the stars stand to each other, composed of chemicals held together by force or energy, and the radiation from each star and planet strongly affect each other, carrying with them chemicals in a very fine and subtle form. Thus, from the planet Mercury, we should expect to receive rays of the wavelength that belongs to Mercury. This gets kind of theosophic, if you think about it. It really does. And containing Mercury itself in a fine form, also certain other chemicals which are contained in the planet to a lesser degree. So as our solar system is believed to have been formed from the splitting up of one star, every planet and every man and every atom within it must still be held and connected one with another by the interplay of identical chemical radiations. For an example, it is said that a ruby is actually a fragment of that part of the original star which finally broke away to form the planet Mars. The astrologer makes careful calculations of the chemical and spiritual influences set up by the continual changing of the relative positions of the planets and luminaries, especially when you hear luminaries, that's the sun and moon. So the relative position of the planets and the luminaries and of their effect upon the microcosm or tiny replica, which is man or us. The microcosmic law comes into play also in the question of time. A man's whole life is said to be mirrored in the moment of his birth. According to one school of astrologists, a person's individuality, his positive side, his character are determined by the zodiacal sign in which the sun is found at his birth. His personality or negative side is determined by the sign in which the moon is found at his birth. When he is born, he is tuned in, as it were, to the play of the planetary influences at the time, and the vibrations set up with him rule him all his life, determining his reactions, both chemical and characteristic, and the environment which they attract. Now, keep in mind, Voldoon. There is no Voldoon. Vera Stanley Alder makes it a point to say, according to one school of astrology. There are other schools of astrology. Like I talked about the other night, the Stephen Forrest's evolutionary astrology, which doesn't really say that these energies are kind of, influencing us, so to speak. They're more, they more represent what our destiny could be if we tapped into it. It is in this way, according to Alder, that people are classified. There are at present scientific experiments to progress whose object is to indicate the differing results of inaugurating the same chemical mixtures at various phases of the planets and also the different reactions at such times in plants and animals. The ancient sages had a great knowledge of this fascinating subject and considered it of paramount importance. First of all, they conducted endless studies about the planets, and we call the results of their research astronomy. They next made extraordinary, complicated, and exhaustive studies of the combined influences of the planets on both the earth and the human beings, and according to their different positions in the heavens at various times. The result of this particular research has come down to us embodied in another science, which we call astrology. Now, astrology divides the heavens into 12 portions, rather like the divisions of an orange. And these divisions, called the 12 signs of the zodiac, correspond roughly with the 12 months of the year. And each of these signs is governed by one of the planets. According to the month of the year in which you were born, you can tell which sign rules your life, and consequently what sort of health you may expect to enjoy, and what your characteristics will be. Astrology is such a lengthy study and so difficult to science that there are few really expert astrologers in the world. And remember, this is back in 68, okay? So those few who do exist usually belong to a family of astrologers whose teaching has been handed down for generations. A genuine astrologer must make complete calculations of the interplay of influences, chemical and otherwise, of every planet upon the person or subject under consideration. But anyone can make a beginning with a simple study of the 12 signs of the zodiac, and although the information is gained is only generalizations, it is close to the truth and therefore helpful and can be used by those who have not learned to cast a horoscope. But to attain his final development, man is supposed to be born under the signs of the zodiac, one by one, and to learn the lessons they teach. And sometimes he is obliged to learn one of these lessons for the third time, perhaps for the 30th. This has all been beautifully expressed in the 12 Labors of Hercules, which was written with a profound knowledge of both astrology and symbolism and contains a deep occult meaning. The ancients declared that the whole history of the evolution of mankind, the solar system, and the universe is described and foretold by the stars, grouped in a kind of mystic shorthand and capable of perfect translation. And such translations are contained in many of the hidden archives. In respect of our year, one sign of the zodiac with its planet is ruling from about the 21st to the 21st of each month. The influences of the signs overlap each other slightly, so that a person born between about the 15th to the 25th of the month is influenced by both signs or by the two signs, being born near to their conjunction. And this gives him a more complex character. The most composite influence takes place on the 22nd of the month, so we find many prominent characters born on that date, such as Wagner, Von Dyke, Byron, Bacon, George Washington, Hitler, Conan Doyle, Baden-Powell, Faraday, and Rider Haggard. A person born during the first half of the month comes under the unmixed influence of the sign and would therefore be of a more definite type. So, I guess according to Alder, I would be a definite Aries, right? It must be understood, however, that in the dividing the whole of humanity into only 12 types, we're merely taking the first step. And boy, do we love to categorize ourselves into all kinds of little people and types and psychological disorders. We love to categorize ourselves, don't we? We are only generalizing, and although we have made an important beginning, we must not take it as the final word. The birth of Christ took place at a rare and wonderful conjunction of the stars, by which they announced, in the aforementioned shorthand, that tremendous event. The three wise men, who were astrologer kings of Chaldea, had been waiting for this conjunction to occur, and when they saw its approach, they set off to journey to Jerusalem, over which town it was apparent that it would take place. They arrived and told King Herod, who at once realized the significance of the conjunction, which heralded a new, quote, king. Herod called all his wise astrologers together and inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. They were all much troubled. Now, history is full of stories illustrating the immense importance given to astrology, of which astronomy was but the foundation. And all priests and governors in olden days had to be well versed in the science of the stars and in the science of numbers. And that is a fact. And if we find that this knowledge existed all over the known world. So yeah, especially back in the day. I mean, they still do it today, but if we want to talk about dynasties that lasted a while, Egypt probably lasted the longest, and they definitely had to know this stuff. I don't think you could govern anything, or even lands or parishes or anything like that, without knowing some of this stuff. So we have only time here to take a superficial glance at the way in which we can apply astrology to the understanding of ourselves and also of racial and world conditions. By means of this science, it is considered possible to map out the whole of a person's life. And this is done in the first place by using the law as in the microcosm, so in the macrocosm, and therefore by postulating that the plan of a person's 60 years is mirrored in the first day, and even in the first moments of his life. In the same way, the history of a race or country can be determined by the influences under which it had its inception. These things can, of course, only be believed through the study of proofs. The way to obtain these proofs is first of all to study astrology, and then to consider the hundreds of horoscopes of famous people which are available, as well as the annals of history itself. So in astrology, the great law of cause and effect, or karma, plays a big part. If, for instance, a man is greedy, it is not magical to predict that at a future date he will suffer from a digestive trouble, or if he is rash and impetuous, that an accident is very sure to befall him. The average astrologer will predict the accident, but if instead he would study the cause and persuade the man to cure his rashness, karma would be defeated or adjusted, and the accident wouldn't need to happen. The wise man is master of his stars. The fool is ruled by them. A conscientious astrologer always tries to show a person what tendencies he has to master, instead of playing upon his love of sensation by describing future events. Yeah, I kind of do that in tarot readings too, but most people don't really like that, you know. They'd rather do the future. Tell me the future. Tell me how wonderful I am. You are wonderful. But you don't need the tarot for that. What does a man need with his future before he has any idea of how to deal with the present? Today contains all possibilities for those who know how to strive for them. Astrology has been sadly neglected as a science, but lately it's beginning to come into its own again, under the patient research work of hard-heeled scientists who are quite unsuspecting of which they're about to unearth. One of the principles uses to which astrology can be put is the thorough diagnosis of a patient, bringing to light the chemical deficiencies or maladjustments in his internal laboratory, and the planetary rays which he is able to assimilate and use, or those which are causing him trouble. This method will do away with all guesswork. It is claimed, as we are assured, that it is an exact science and will play a large part in the future of medicine. That still hasn't happened. But remember that, if you guys remember, the ancient wisdom is that 3-stage of hermetics, right? Theurgy, alchemy, and astrology. And they all work together. They all run together. So some of the biochemical experts have declared that the 12 principal cell salts found in the human body are ruled by the 12 signs of the zodiac. They affirm that a person uses up more of the cell salt belonging to the sign under which he was born, as the chemical is connected with the keynote of his activity. Therefore, the first deficiency that occurs in his internal laboratory is this cell salt, his birth salt, and the various symptoms of his ills may be traced primarily to this depletion. All this was apparently known to the ancients, but as they gave to the cell salts the names of gods and described their activities in mythical parables, we are only just beginning to understand what they meant. Let us now take a rapid glance at the major general classifications of astrological characteristics. The 12 signs of the zodiac represent the 12 lessons of human existence, the 12 qualities to be developed in the formation of the perfect man. 12 times 12 is what? Only 144,000 will get into the kingdom of heaven, blah, diddy, blah. It's all hidden in there, though. It is said that these qualities are gradually achieved by every human being, life after life, but not necessarily sign after sign. That is where man's free will comes in. If he chooses to work under some particular sign more often than the others, or repulses the lessons of one sign altogether, a one-sided character results, such as a genius with evil tendencies. The zodiacal year begins at the vernal equinox on March 21st with the sign of Aries. The symbol of Aries is a ram, because the ram pushes his head into the wintry stubble and plows it up with his horns to expose the new budding green upon which his family can feed. Aries represents the first crude uprush of life, the beginning of the human journey, and therefore bestows extreme physical activity, daring and impulsiveness upon its natives. Aries rules the head, and therefore the Aryan, or person born between March 21st and April 21st, uses the brain intensively. Although without much experience of life to back him, Aries is ruled by Mars, the warlike planet. So man at the beginning of his journey spoils for a fight, is a born leader, eager, brave, with a quick working brain, keen to help. But he is a poor judge of character and often deceived. He makes a bad subordinate, and although plucky, what does plucky mean? Anybody know what that means? Plucky? I have no idea what that means. So, I hate not knowing what the words mean. He's a born leader, we're often deceived. Although plucky, he is full of fears because he has not yet developed much faith or philosophy. The Aryan should be guarded from overworking the brain and given plenty of sleep. Hans Christian Andersen was an Aries born, although very advanced type. From April 21st to May 21st, we have the second sign, that of Taurus, and its symbol is a bull. And those born under it partake of the nature of that animal. They are very strong but quiet and plodding, until, if suddenly roused, they plunge ruthlessly to their goal. They are ruled by the planet Venus, and so love is a part of man's second lesson. He can love devotedly and work the earth patiently. It is among the Taurians that we find many of our great agriculturists and lovers of nature, also our singers and poets. Often they serve their fellow men with courage and devotion. Sir James Barrie and Florence Nightingale are examples of this sign. Taurus folk are very strong and easily overnourished. Their chief ills arise from too luxurious living. Having learned both activity and service, the next lesson which man has to tackle is how to use the brain for practical matters and for reasoning. This is a work of those born under the third sign, Gemini, May 21st to June 21st, whose symbol is the twins. And this symbol represents a dual type of mind, one who can see both sides of a question and jumps with keen interest to every new idea presented. Such people apparently changeable to every new idea presented, but such people apparently changeable and ambitious without knowing exactly for what, and whose brains race like chattering birds from branch to branch of the tree of knowledge, have difficult characters to govern. They are ruled by the planet Mercury, which gives quickness and brilliance, and through an intensive study of life, they learn to develop a logical reasoning mind. This brilliance and rapidity of thought depends upon the nervous system more than on the brain, so these people must be guarded against overworking their nerves. Relax, Gemini. Advanced types will have attained to a very broad vision, and we can take an example of Elgar and Dean Inge. Our human being has by now gained much experience, and so his next lesson is to learn how to apply it. The fourth sign, Cancer, from June 21st to July 22nd, bestows great patience and tenacity, and a genius for parenthood and family life. As we develop, however, we of course become more complex, and so Cancer people are sometimes restless and love to travel. The symbol of Cancer is the crab, who carries his house on his back and moves through life in a curious zigzag way, suddenly going backwards again when least expected. Cancer people are like that. Just when about to achieve success, they will turn back or begin something else. And so in spite of their industry, they have a life of ups and downs. Sir Joshua Reynolds ruined many of his pictures through continually changing his methods of painting. Cancer people are ruled by the moon, which makes them deeply sensitive and passionate. They badly need a life of discipline and order. Henry VIII is a good example of a Cancer type who became undisciplined, and John Calvin of one who went to the other extreme. Calvinism. That's some hardcore stuff there. Now we come to the point where man has learnt a great deal of the human side of life and is able to produce very fine results. His next task, therefore, is to stand forth as a powerful and well-developed human being capable of high achievements. So the fifth sign is Leo the Lion from July 22nd to August 23rd, and we sometimes find born under it the kings of men, people of power, large-hearted, strong both mentally and physically, proud, ambitious, and popular. They have not yet touched the divine intuition, and so as a rule they misunderstand and despise those weaker than themselves, although they attract many sycophants. They often suffer cruel delusions in their friendships through their own inadaptability. They are ruled by the sun, the heart of the solar system, and are therefore liable to high blood pressure and other affections of the heart and circulation. We expect to find famous people born under this sign, and sure enough, among them are Napoleon, Mussolini, H.P. Blavatsky. Having risen to great heights through impulsiveness, forcefulness, and the talent of self-expression, the next quality to be acquired is the discrimination of taste, the lack of which brought Leo into many unhappy relationships. Therefore, we find the sixth sign, Virgo, of August 23rd to September 23rd, whose symbol is the Virgin, teaches this lesson. Virgo people are born with a natural fastidiousness and critical faculty. They are ruled by Mercury, who also had sway over the people of Gemini, but whereas in that sign, great energy was expanded in the collecting of facts from all quarters, the Virgo people have all the experience to draw upon, plus the fruit garnered in Cancer and Leo, so they're able to take up life from the angle of the critic rather than the man of action. They are adaptable to almost any pursuit, make excellent subordinates, are plotting, and generally successful. Their exquisite taste is evident in many walks of life. From their ranks are drawn both restaurant keepers and art critics. Journalism and hygiene also attract them. Hygiene. They rely on the material side of life, and because Mercury rules the nerves, they often suffer from ills due to worry, hypersensitiveness, and imagination. Nevertheless, they can be controlled, practical, and resourceful. We can study one of the higher types of this sign in Elizabeth, the Virgo or Virgin Queen. The sign of Virgo ends at the autumnal equinox on September 23rd, so we have therefore traversed the first half of man's journey around the zodiac. He has learned how to be the complete human being, but yet only half his journey is accomplished. The remaining half will be taken up in learning to give over the reins of power to the spiritual man and live in both worlds at once, with the feet firmly planted on the earth, but with the mind in communion with the divine. The man has now become the aspirant, realizing that there is a world for his conquering with infinitely more than the physical world. His task now becomes harder to understand, but the first thing that such a man must achieve is balance. And so the symbol of Libra, September 23rd to October 23rd, the seventh sign, is the balance. The Libran seeks balance all through his life. In fact, he misses many opportunities through too much weighing and balancing in his mind through second thoughts. In his case, these are not always the wisest. He has reached the stage where man has become psychic and intuitive, and he would do well to act on his first impressions. Librans are ruled by Venus and so are full of love, but their love has become more mental than physical. They're able to love abstract things such as harmony, justice, and beauty, and they shrink from all disharmonies in life. Some of them will do anything to avoid a row. This desire for harmony and balance deprives them of the more direct energy and impulsiveness of the preceding signs. The refining process has begun, but those who do not understand may think Librans cowardly and weak. They may sometimes be condemned to rather colorless lives, and we find among their ranks many lawyers, judges, and specialists, also architects and research workers, as all these require the qualities of care and balance. Their personal life is often unhappy through their being too analytical of other people and afraid to let themselves go. So we can be sure that they must guard against loneliness and depression, which feelings often cause them to overwork themselves. As an example of the advanced types of Librans, we can take Faraday, Sarah Bernhardt, and Annie Besant. Having begun to learn, I got to turn this off. This is killing me. All right. So, having begun to learn how to transmute the tender passion of love to higher planes, man's next step is to bend the warlike force of Mars in the same direction. So, we see that the eighth sign, Scorpio, from October 23rd to November 22nd, is ruled by Mars, giving to its native a strong, forceful, and magnetic personality. Just remember, Pluto and Uranus and Neptune weren't used in traditional astrology, so Scorpio was ruled by Mars. We're coming now to the types who are so stored with accumulated magnetism and experience, so full of character that they exercise great fascination and sometimes call forth fanatical devotion from their friends. The sign of Scorpio has produced more saints than almost any other, and probably more villains, too. These people are capable of the best or the worst, but never of being negative or unnoticed. Therefore, Scorpio has three symbols. Firstly, the scorpion, the animal who bites itself with its tail, representing the man who is his own worst enemy. Secondly, the serpent, representing the birth of wisdom. And thirdly, the eagle, soaring to the sun, showing the final rising upward from the earthly ties and attaining the spiritual sunlight. The Scorpio native usually passes through the fire of the temptation of sex in all its forms. He has to learn that it is his sex force which he needs for use in higher channels and no other. He's usually versatile, full of ideas, a leader who can sway audiences, a mental fighter, proud, ambitious, sensitive, and a good organizer. He's capable of intense and enduring feelings. The higher types are the humanitarians, peacemakers, and philosophers. The Scorpio native should be guarded against evil companions and always allowed to wield authority. We can take as examples St. Augustine, Muhammad, Martin Luther, and Edward VII. By this time, man has become a very potential being, though still extremely self-centered. The I dominates everything, so that in the next stage of development, we find the beginnings of unselfishness start to take shape. The ninth sign is that of Sagittarius, November 22nd to the 21st, and its symbol is to the archer shooting straight into the sky, representing the quick, strong mind leaping at its goal, truth. These people instinctively grasp the fact that truth is beautiful and joyful, and translate the realization into a keen wish to spread joy and beauty around them. They are the lovers of life, full of kindly humor. They may be domineering, egotistical, and stubborn, but they cannot live without attempting to make their companions happy. They are therefore usually the souls of hospitality. They give great encouragement to music, the arts, and all the pleasures and luxuries of life. Containing as they do the qualities of all preceding signs, they are extremely versatile. But as they are ruled by Jupiter, music and ceremonial makes a special appeal to them. Their love of life makes them an easy prey to self-indulgence, and they are very excitable and emotional. Most of their ills come from these two characteristics. Their agile minds and prophetic instinct cause them to jump to results without patient study, and this is a snare to their undoing. They often fail to appreciate the worth of slower folk. And as they are high-powered people, Sagittarians must always be actively employed, but they should have short intervals of complete rest in which to relax. Their tenseness. Because of their zest for life, they are popular, and we can take as an example Lord Beaconsfield, Queen Alexandra, Hine, and Winston Churchill. Now we've arrived at the stage where man has at last realized the wonder of spiritual accomplishment and has bent his will to attain it. His challenge is at once accepted, and Saturn, or Satan, the great tester and trainer of humanity, steps in to help. So we find that the 10th sign, Capricorn, from December 21st to January 21st is ruled by the planet Saturn, whose metal is lead, and who exerts a heavy crushing influence, holding his victims down to earth, pressing and pressing upon him until all the dross in his nature is forced out. We talked about this yesterday, about the goat, right? So the symbol of Capricorn is the goat, and man has ceased to be the sheep, listening and following others. He has decided to stand on his own feet and work out his own salvation. He wants proof of all that he may hitherto have believed. So the Capricornian is, above all, thoughtful and practical, outwardly perhaps a materialist, yet with a worship of intellect and an interest in the sciences and in the occult. He is independent, proud, and domineering, happiest when leading and organizing, and although he lacks the kindly humor of Sagittarian and the brilliant enthusiasm of Leo, he has more tact, pity, and patience than either. And with these, he is beginning to earn his godhead. He's learning to see outside of himself, using his own sufferings to identify himself with the feelings of all humanity. Such a one is likely to become a communist or a socialist or fighter for some idea. The difficult personal adjustment he is making often causes him to be hard to understand, complex, and peculiar in some of his reactions. Nevertheless, in spite of the stern discipline of his life, he is usually long-lived and rarely is obliged to call in the doctor. We can take as an examples of the higher types of Capricorns Joan of Arc, Woodrow Wilson, Benjamin Franklin, and Gladstone. Saturn's intensive work on man is not completed by the end of the sign of Capricorn, so he carries it right through the next zodiacal month to the sign of Aquarius, January 21st to February 21st, which follows, is also ruled by that planet. So by now, man has lost much of his crudity, and having had some of his pride knocked out of him, he is less egocentric. He feels that he's a part of the whole and has made a great step forward in that he is beginning to give more importance to others than to himself. The symbol of Aquarius is the water bearer, pouring out the waters of life upon mankind, and the child of this sign loves to merge himself with people in gatherings and functions. He loves to work in intimate relations with the masses. He is a visionary and inventive and has a great desire for the public welfare. No longer ambitious for the self, he's apt to remain in the background unless inspired to work for a cause in which he can rise to great heights and can then push forward quite impersonally. The Aquarian mind is learning to be non-attached, clear-cut, honest, with a love of freedom and a sympathy with human weakness. He is still oversensitive, but he reads character instinctively, seeking through or seeing through people, and this gives him intense like and dislikes. He's already developed some of the inner or finer subtle qualities of the soul, and this causes him to be very delicately balanced. And for this reason, he often feels frail in health, although in reality, he has great reserves of force. As examples of the higher types, we can take Abraham Lincoln, Charles Dickens, Swedenborg, Darwin, Ruskin, and Voltaire. So now the merging of the self into other people's lives produces genius for the stage, so we also find such people as Neil Gwynn, Pavlova, and Sir Henry Irving under Aquarius. Now we have arrived at the last sign of the 12, the one therefore under which the most perfected type of spiritual man can be born, and this sign is called Pisces, and lasts from February 21st to March 21st. Its symbol is the fish, which is also the symbol of Christianity. The lesson of Pisces is a final letting go of the self, the complete merging into the lives and feelings of others. Therefore, under this sign are born our most brilliant actors. The inspiration which the people of Pisces have earned produces also fine poets, dramatists, and musicians. The strongest and weakest types are born at this time. The force which flows through the Piscean is difficult to handle, and unless he turns it to good or into a good account, it may drive him to drugs, drink, and other excesses. The sign is a dual one, so the two ways are open. The native may rise, if inspired, to any heights of self-denial and attainment, but he needs encouragement and confidence in himself. As with all the later signs, his character is complex and versatile. His past training gives him a natural understanding as he absorbs knowledge rather than studies it. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, who bestows brilliance and a love of ceremony, as we saw in Sagittarius. So our Piscean contributes much to the decorative and romantic in life, and this arouses intense and sometimes fanatical devotion in his friends. If these friends push him in the right way, he can become a great public servant, but this depends upon cooperation with others. He prefers to work in brotherhood. He has identified himself with the universe, and this gives him a great love of travel and the sea. Some of the advanced types in this sign, we can choose Chopin. I don't ever say that right. Michelangelo, David Livingstone, David Garrick, and Ibsen. So now that we've completed our initial review of these types born under the 12 signs, we must, however, remember that astrology subdivides them all infinitum, and that the laws of rebirth, karma, and free will arrange for numberless variations of the order in which people progress through these signs. The number of times they have accomplished the full round around the wheel will determine whether they are old and experienced souls or new souls. The old souls are, of course, becoming more rounded out as they approach the state of perfect man, who is a blend of the best in all the signs. The examples which we have given of famous people are therefore the older souls, and not really very typical of their sign, but the mediocre and simple types rarely leave their mark in history. With regard to the 12 cell salts that we discussed earlier, which are the principal agents of activity in the human body, let us note the interesting relation they are said to bear to the signs of the zodiac. Aries, the ram, the brain worker, uses up very much of the potassium phosphate, which nourishes the brain fluid and produces the highest rate of vibration in the body. A deficiency causes brain fog and lack of comprehension. Taurus, the bull, ruling the liver, governs the cell salt sulfate of sodium, which eliminates excess water from the body due to the abundant intake of the luxury loving taurian. A deficiency of this salt causes such ills as diabetes and quinsy. Gemini, the twins, ruling the nervous system, governs the cell salt potassium chloride, which forms fibrin in the blood, and so builds the nerves, while a deficiency causes thickening of the fibrin, and therefore bronchitis, asthma, and other nervous diseases result. Cancer, the tenacious crab, rules the spleen and governs the salt fluoride of lime, which builds the tenacious elastic fibers holding the body together. A deficiency of this causes sagging throughout the organs, which many attendant ills from depression to dropsy. Leo, the sun, ruler of the heart and vitality, governs the salt phosphate of magnesia, which regulates the muscular spasms, such as those controlling the heartbeats. A deficiency causes cramps, lack of muscular force, palpitations, and meningitis. Virgo, ruler of the solar plexus and stomach, governs the salt potassium sulfate, which makes the oil necessary to keep the machinery going throughout the body. A deficiency causes thickening of the oil, which clogs the pores and produces various forms of stagnation. Libra, the balance, ruler of the kidneys, governs the cell salt carbonate of sodium, and this salt holds the balance between the acids and the fluids in the system and produces a harmonious life. A deficiency endangers acidity with hate, jealousy, depression, and their attendant ailments such as headaches and lumbago. Scorpio, the scorpion ruler of the sex organs, governs the cell salt sulfate of lime. This needs to be transmuted by water to form the white plaster of Paris, and this strengthens the whole system and gives tone to the gray matter of the brain. A deficiency demoralizes the brain, destroying the power of elevated thought, and renders the body prone to infectious diseases. I never heard all this before, by the way. I don't remember this part, but Sagittarius, the archer, rules the thighs and governs the cell salt silica, which is really quartz. This is formed of strong, minute arrow-shaped pieces which stiffen the walls of the hair, the nails, the nerve sheaths, and cells, and pierce a way outwards to the surface for necessary eruptions. A deficiency produces weakness of the cell walls, leading to various forms of self-poisoning, such as rheumatism and other inflammations. Capricorn, the goat, rules the bones and governs the cell salt calcium phosphate, and this uses albumin to make cement for the bones. A deficiency causes diseases due to the overflow of albumin, which upsets the gastric juices and brings on such afflictions as Bright's disease and other digestive troubles. Aquarius, the water bearer, rules the white corpuscles and governs the cell salt sodium chloride, which acts as water carrier to the human system. A deficiency causes general frailty and such diseases as jaundice. And finally, Pisces, the fish, rules the feet, or the foundation of the body, and the red corpuscles, and governs the cell salt phosphate of iron, which is the foundation of the blood. A deficiency gives bad circulation, chills, and fevers. So now we have a rough idea as to how the planetary rays, chemists, and other scientists is in progress at present. Wait, hold on. So now that I said that wrong. We have a rough idea to how the planetary rays are said to affect the chemicals within us and our own reactions. Much research work along these lines by the certain of the biochemists and other scientists is in progress at present. I guess so. Maybe in 68. Naturally, the reactions of the cell salts overlap and interplay with great complexity, and the science would appear to be a deep one. How much truth there is in all this, and how much study it would take to produce useful results, are questions which we must leave to the student who feels disposed to investigate this. We cannot leave this science of astrology without applying the macrocosmic law to it, and observing how it works out on a larger scale. According to its findings, then, our own sun with its planets and its turn revolving around a parent sun. The signs of the zodiac repeat themselves in a still greater cycle, during which our sun takes about 2,500 years to pass through each sign. But, as this greater movement is in the opposite direction from the smaller one, the signs follow one another in reverse order, and each of these great periods is called an age. During 2,000 years of the Jewish dispensation, the sun was passing through Aries, the ram, which animal figures very largely in sacrifice and the symbol of the time. Before that period, there was the age of Taurus, wherein the winged bull, representing the Taurian capacity for rising to spiritual heights, was worshipped and sculptured by such people as the Chaldeans and Assyrians. The Sphinx would appear in this light to have been built during the age of Leo, somewhere before 10,000 BC, as it has a lion's body. Following the Jewish came the Christian dispensation under the sign of Pisces, the fish. The fish is the symbol of Christianity, and some of us are required to eat it every Friday. The 2,000 years of the Piscean age drew to a close with the 19th century, and we are now coming gradually into the new age. This is the Aquarian age, according to Bear Stanley Alder, when the waters of life will be poured out to all mankind. And during this period, we are told that the universal brotherhood will become an accomplished fact and a golden age will be brought to birth. According to these calculations, then, it must be about 34,000 years since the previous Aquarian period, containing also a golden age. Historians who study this particular question proclaim that this took place on the lost continent of Atlantis, whose submergence caused the spread of its culture to other lands. There have been several hundred books written about Atlantis, and many founded on geological and biological research. But the subject is one which is not to stir racial memory and enlarge man's viewpoint. It enables him to understand the inevitable succession of cycles, and therefore to prepare hopefully at this time for the golden age, which is promised to us soon by the short hand of the skies. Oh man, that's a lot of astrology, and I will say that there is some other books, I just don't remember the titles of them, that talk about these cell salts with the alchemy and stuff, and all this is supposed to run together. But yeah, we're well over. We got to pay for the music licensing. We'll be back in 3 or 4 minutes. Grab a coffee, grab a smoke, take a leak, whatever you got to do. This is Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is country music singer and void walker Jason Benoit, and when I need my fix on the world of magic and the capabilities of the human consciousness, I listen to Joe Roop right here on Lighting the Void Radio.
Olivia from Washington. Laid off and trying to keep our little kids from realizing that mommy and daddy haven't eaten in a while.
Roger from California. I'm grateful we could afford our son's surgery. I'm nervous that now we can't really afford food.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Donna from Louisiana. The storm just hit, and we went from donating to the food bank to needing it.
Keisha from South Carolina. I've been skipping meals so my 2 kids can eat, but filling up on water doesn't really work.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Have you ever wondered, what do the stars say for me? Or, will the next month or the next year be more favorable? How about, are our 2 signs compatible? Each month, at the new moon, you can ask these questions live with me, your astrologer psychic, Mary DeCina, along with host of Lighting the Void, Joe Roop. Join us at the new moon for Cosmic Conditions. We look forward to working with your energy.
Every new moon at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
This is Malorcas45, fan of the Fridge FM, challenging everyone to open their mind's eye. Listen to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop to gain precision for your third eye vision.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Roop.
I wouldn't make it a habit calling me that, son.
To Lighting the Void Radio. I'm your host, Joe Roop, live on Fringe.fm, YouTube, TalkStream Live, TuneIn, Live 365, and all the other places. Gypsy Jenny says, I'm large. I mean, I'm late. Hell yeah, you're large. In a good way, though. What's up, Jenny? What's up, Ava? We'll see what's happening. All right. So we're studying these books of Vera Stanley Alder, The Finding of the Third Eye. As this gets deeper and more interesting, according to Vera Stanley Alder, she is revealing the ancient wisdom of astrology, alchemy, and it's hermetics, really, right? But it's pretty cool stuff if you believe this kind of thing. Again, I will say you don't have to believe it. Just research it and do your own. I don't recommend, like, once, if people get, alchemy is dangerous, man. Like, when people get into like big time alchemy, they start ingesting these things and stuff like that. I've seen some bad stuff happen. So I'm just saying there's a reason why there's a process to all this, I think. And, you know, just because we're reading a book doesn't make it true. Doesn't make it a lie either, though. Stuff to think about. Yeah, what does this voicemail say? Hey, bro, this is Scott from Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. Great show tonight. I'm just calling to verify the number works. Have a good one. Yeah, number works. 501-777-5631. That number works. Punxsutawney. Okay. Let's get rid of the alien. The music's over, buddy. You can go. What's up, Randy? What's up, Jay? Shout out to all those Pisces out there, Jay says. All right. Male and female is the next part. Let us see what part of the much tormented question of sex plays in this deeper conception of life that we're trying to reach. Boy, do we love this topic. Don't we? All right. We must follow our usual procedure and first try to get at the roots and underlying causes, taking as broad as a scientific a view of the subject as we can. So we find that male and female are really the positive and negative aspects in nature. That is to say, the male is the positive or electrical quality, and female is the magnetic, receptive, or negative quality. When the two fuse, create action or creative action occurs, manifestation occurs. The word negative is here used in its electrical application and means that which does not act but holds power. It does not represent futility or weakness, but reserves force. The whole of the universe is built upon the fusion of male and female. From the greatest planet to the tiniest chemical cell, the same process goes on. It's really as if the world were an electric pole containing vast numbers of electric poles of all sizes down to the most minute. Let us consider this question of electricity for a moment. Quite simply, you have a current of electricity passing down a pole or a straight line. The pole can be a bar of iron, a planet, or a person. One side of the pole is the positive or electrical side, and the other side is the negative or magnetic side. The magnetic side draws to itself, absorbs, and retains power when it contacts the positive. For example, the action or electrical side of the pole, and it gives off this power, combustion occurs, a spark is lit, and a force is generated. It is exactly this process which causes a planet to rotate, moves a car, creates a child, or makes a plant grow. The positive electrical male side of nature is represented by the acids, and the passive female magnetic side of nature is represented by the alkalides. Before a planet or a car moves, the right constituents of acid and alkali must be assembled to create the little explosion of electrical life force which brings action about. It is also this identical driving force which motivates our bodies. The tiniest cell in our bodies is an electric battery in a state of combustion, just as our whole body is also electrically polarized. So hopefully this gives you a deeper understanding, because I like to talk about sacred sexuality. By what I mean, it's the driving force of everything. Usually when I talk about sacred sexuality, people think it's just the act of physical sex or something, and that's not it. You know, that's like one aspect of it. So the acid part of our bodies is the action part, the muscles. The alkali part of us is the blood, which holds and carries the power to those muscles. When in a state of health, the two are rightly balanced, but at death, the power which holds them apart, the pole is withdrawn and the acid floods the alkaline blood, causing the whole mechanism to become static. In chemistry, you must take an alkali element and combine it with an acid element if you want to create a compound which is strong and useful. If you want to make a bomb, which is only condensing the production of force into a small space, you must also bring together an acid and an alkali. When they are allowed to meet, the bomb explodes. The same thing happens when a well-matched man and woman meet. Attraction leads to combination and then action. So it must be inferred, however, that a man is all electrical and a woman all magnetic. It must not be inferred. Correction. It must not be inferred, however, that a man is all electrical and a woman is all magnetic. On the contrary, these two qualities run in juxtaposition through every cell and atom, but all existing things are preeminently of one sex, although containing both interiorly in various degrees. The planet Mars, for instance, is preeminently masculine, but of course is held in manifestation by its pole of positive and negative. Our Earth has its pole running through it called north and south, has its two ends, and of course, one side of the Earth is electrical and the other magnetic. So, also a man and a woman, through preeminently male electric and female magnetic, have each what we might call their poles running through them. The right side of our bodies is electric and the left side magnetic. The right side, the side of action, and the left, the female or heart side. The subdivision of these two continues to infinity in our bodies until each tiny cell has its pole, and even each atom, as we know, is revolving around its polar axis. Thus, throughout the whole of life, from the greatest to the tiniest, we have the same process going on. The female magnetic power attracts the male electric force, and creation and action take place. Now, as this process runs throughout everything, we may expect to find an expression of it in our own brain, and we do. The human brain has a shape curiously like the human embryo, and it contains a part of which is male and a part which is female. When these two parts are coordinated by mental training and concentration and made to cooperate, think about hemisync, right? A most wonderful development takes place, and the mind becomes inspired, forceful, and creative. This was well known to be true by very ancient peoples. In their own remarkable way, they worship the means by which a human being can contact God within his own brain. They worship those symbols of the male and female power in the head. Succeeding generations in their ignorance debased this worship into phallic worship, or sex in its physical sense, like I just said earlier. Our ideas about the things that matter have grown smaller and smaller down the centuries until at present they are almost non-existent. We can now begin to glimpse the truth lying behind the worship in many ancient civilizations of the great trinities of life. The Christians adopted them and gave us God, the life force, the Virgin or Mother, or the wisdom or stored power, and the Son, the result of that blending. The one who acts and achieves is the Son. In most ancient religions, we can trace an appreciation of this Trinity. The alchemists expressed the triangle in their salt, our cell salts being that which builds and acts within our own bodies. Then there is also our sun, the male electrical positive force, whose rays strike the magnetic female moon. The combination of both rays reaching the earth causes fertilization, movement, and growth. So for a long time, we have been accustomed in our little limited way to think of sex only in the primitive terms of our power of physical procreation, not as the vast process on which the whole universe is built. Infinitely petty and restricting taboos have shamefacedly locked up the entire question in a secret box in our minds. We muddle along in complete ignorance, oblivious that the box contains our greatest jewels. Let us now take out these jewels of ours and study their value. We're confronted throughout history with certain symbols. One of them is the serpent, which was always much in evidence wherever the ancient temples devoted to wisdom flourished. Since the old story of Adam and Eve, the serpent has represented two things, knowledge and sex, thus hinting at a close connection between them. And the secret is that the creative force within us is one single force, whether it be used for physical or mental ends. We have the choice as to which way we shall downwards. In material-minded or primitive man, it continues to be used purely for procreation or sensual gratification. But as man aspires to higher ideals, as he yearns to create mentally and live in the spirit, this force is gradually drawn upwards to the creative principles in the brain. This force is called by the Easterns the Kundalini and is likened to a serpent of fire lying coiled at the base of the spine. If man steadily purifies his mind and nature through living chastely and moderately, he's able to magnetize the Kundalini serpent upwards through the channel of his spine until finally it reaches the masculine and feminine principles of the brain and fires them into coordination. The man is then filled with inspiration and becomes attuned to the inner world of wisdom. This can only be accomplished with the help of the Kundalini serpent. Perhaps Christ gave a hint of this when he said, "Be ye wise as serpents." Men and women have therefore the choice as to what they will do with this power within them. Shall they exhaust it in the various self-indulgences of their sex lives, both mental and physical, or shall they use it to become creative in the realms of the spirit and higher mind, a force for good? It is this tremendous choice which every human being has to face. And usually they face it unconsciously or in the dark because of the utter helplessness of the present-day education in these matters. Hardly one of the many pitfalls surrounding them is properly explained. It's easy to convince ourselves of the fact that it is one and the same force which feeds either the procreative organs or the brain. The gland specialists have brought much to light proving this. They tell us that the pineal gland in the head acts as a brake upon sex development. As we have said, it was once a third eye. Now it regulates the action of light upon the body. If it is diseased or inactive, we get precocious sex development. The pituitary body in the head is the gland of intellectually, promoting the mathematical and artistic powers. When its deficient, sexual abnormalities result. We also have the evidence of our numberless lunatic asylums, people largely with those whose brains have deteriorated through the sex excess of various kinds. On the other hand, we have many cases of people who apparently have gone mad as the result of fanatical piousness. This needs another explanation. So here we have come up against the result of what might be termed spiritual greed. A person who is greedy and self-indulgent on the physical plane will naturally not change his character just because he decides that there's more benefit will accrue him from a pursuit of spiritual assets. It is possible to be greedy for spiritual food, which is yet undeserved. Very often people attempt to make it in a few years the spiritual progress for which they should have been patiently working their entire life. The result is that the body has not had time for its vibrations to become purified and raised to a higher tempo, and the brain is still full of the dregs of worldly and pure thoughts. When therefore by a forcing process, the Kundalini serpent of fire is prematurely driven up the spine, burning away all dross as it goes, and arrives within a brain unfit to receive it. Parts of the brain cannot stand this bath of fire and perish with the sudden burning of the dross they still contain, and various forms of derangement will ensue. Many highly dangerous breathing exercises originating in the East are designed with the purpose of arousing the Kundalini. They bring disastrous results when used by ignorant or materially minded people. Sometimes the same issue is achieved when those with mixed motives fling themselves violently into the various religious cults and isms we hear that their final goal turns out to be a mental home. Yet another mishap can befall the aspirant who is not sufficiently wholehearted. If he once arouses the serpent and then subconsciously repents of his endeavors, the serpent rushes downwards and plunges his owner into the worst of orgies and excesses. Unfortunately, this sometimes happens to saintly men who have been just a little too ambitious for spiritual gain. You guys ever, when I forget what podcast I was on. Oh, yeah. Truth and Shadow, something like that, where we were talking about all of these different cults, when they get this, like, these cult leaders get this, like, spiritual greed thing. And many times, whether it's John D., Joseph Smith, or the guy that leads Waco or whatever, or even Crowley, a lot of times these spiritual leaders, you'll find that they want to sleep with everybody. And not only everybody, your wives too, or there's wife swapping going on, all kinds of stuff. And so they have this energy inside them. It's almost as if they're feeding on this stuff. It's really weird, We there's so much about the mysteries we don't know, but we do know that back in the day, Plato, even the Egyptians and all these people, it took them years to develop this balance, this spiritual enlightenment. Now, people are doing all kinds of shortcuts and different things to try this stuff out. So I don't know, right? Like, this is why I tell everybody that listens to this stuff when we talk about magic, ceremony, hermetics, spirituality, all this stuff, when we talk about these things, to take it slow and safely. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, in my opinion, like, the slower and the more balanced approach you can take to this stuff, the better you're going to develop, a more healthy development. You don't have to rush this stuff, and you definitely don't have to rush this stuff to get out of body. If you're just concerned about getting out of body, you don't even need to really worry about the Kundalini stuff. You'll get out of body. So, yeah, it's pretty trippy. This is like a whole rabbit hole we could go down here. All right, so we have to realize that steady, patient, even, and balanced progress is the surest way. We must not expect to come to results too easily. Greed of the mental or spiritual body will produce a congestion and sickness on those planes as surely as its counterpart will on the physical. And I would even say that to some extent it causes toxicity and mental issues, psychological deficiencies too, To try and attain mental expansion while still the victim of inhibitions and repressions is like expecting to become a ballet dancer while still refusing to use certain limbs or muscles. We have so fully to realize the glories of possible attainment that all lesser desires simply fade out. They do not have to be repressed. It is only in the purity of a one-pointed mind. The root meaning of pure is complete. Remember, the root meaning of the word pure is complete. So it is only in the purity or completeness of a one-pointed mind that we can welcome as one of the greatest events of our life, the safe awakening of the Kundalini serpent. The same truth applies in the relation between the sexes, where again sincerity of purpose and wholeheartedness are the determining factors of resulting happiness. When a spiritually minded man and woman fall in love with each other, there occurs a blending and a union between the sevenfold bodies of each of them, culminating in spiritual as well as physical creation. And this gives an ecstasy and fulfillment 7 times greater than that which the average physical union can bring. Force and power are engendered, and 100-fold more on all planes through having been conserved instead of frittered away. Both the children and all the creative works resulting from such a union would be incomparably superior to the average. Now think about this too. I'm just saying, just think about this, because this is the kind of stuff I've been talking about. Like, so love, romance, and all this stuff. Remember what she said about attraction. So when you find a person that you're in love with and like spiritually in love with and just in love with their whole being and that kind of thing, that's like true attraction. And if you make love, it's an entirely bigger thing. And you can tell the difference. And if you say, no, it's all the same, you're full of shit, or you're just, what are you guys calling an NPC? But you can tell the difference when you're doing this. Or let's say you have like a one night stand. Most of the time, pretty much everybody I've talked to that has done that, or a short lived relation, has just been like, oh, yeah, it's almost a little bit better than eating dessert. And that's about it, with a bit of, depending on your upbringing, shame, or whatever, whatever stupid thing you feel. But falling in love, finding true spiritual attraction with somebody, and then bringing those energies together is how we create all kinds of things. Right. I think, and it's just my opinion, that energy that Vera Stanley Alder's talking about right here got covered up by religion and made way too. It's like they put marriage and tradition on it so hard, and they made these rules about divorce and all the stuff that seemed not arbitrary, whatever the opposite of arbitrary is, but seemed that way. But it was priests in the ancient days trying to force people to not throw this energy around, and even later, as you'll see if you study like psychology and social engineering, later it was used for other manipulations. So the sacred sanction between spiritual union between man and woman, and in my humble opinion, has been, I guess you could say, sabotaged in the worst way possible in all aspects. Now, back to the book. So if every child were brought up with an understanding and ambition focused upon such an ideal, we should soon have a heaven upon the earth. As it is, the subject of sex is so little understood that any irregularities in its manifestation consign the victim to suffering and ignorant and misunderstood wretchedness. Yeah, some people have such an unhealthy viewpoint about it. Even if you start talking about it, they start feeling weird and they want to run. That is not healthy, man. The interplay of the masculine and feminine, or positive and negative principles throughout our bodies, is not yet fully grasped. The ancient wisdom teaches that man, having a positive masculine physical body, has a feminine negative etheric body. And this may be why he has in some ways much less staying power in the matter of pain and endurance than women, who owes her endurance to the fact that in spite of her negative feminine physical body, she has a positive or male etheric body. You guys ever wonder, like, a lot of women seem tougher when it comes to pain, right? They may not be able to do things like as far as whatever men do as far as strength is concerned because of the lack of testosterone. But when it comes to pain, I've seen women get sick, pneumonia, even my ex-wife during childbirth, things that I would be like, oh my God, I just don't think I could handle that stuff. They seem a lot, for the most part, tougher, and it's really weird too. It's almost like the more feminine a woman is, and all women are feminine to some degree, right? But it's like the more feminine energy they have, I guess you could call it, the tougher they are when it comes to this kind of thing. And I don't really understand if it's a body toughness or a mental toughness. I'm not sure which one it is, but my grandmother was an example. It was amazing what that woman could withstand. Whereas, when Grandpa would get sick, he would whine like a baby. He'd be like a little baby boy, right? Like he'd be almost like he was a wuss compared to what she could handle, Let's see. What's up, Randy? Mike? Did I say hi to y'all? All right. Man's astral or emotional body is masculine and therefore active and under his control, whereas woman's astral is negative and absorbing. It is at the mercy of outside influences, and that is why she can be dragged down to lower depths in some ways than a man can. A drunken woman is more terrible than a drunken man. Okay, in what way? You have to clarify that. You can't just say a drunk woman was worse than a drunk guy. In what way? Better be more specific about that one. It would seem to follow that the man's mental body has a preponderance of the feminine quality and woman's of the masculine, and perhaps that explains why wise men have always considered that women can actually take the lead and inspire them from the mental level if she but realizes it and fits herself to do so. Man is meant to learn sensitivity and intuition from woman, and woman is meant to learn steadiness and honesty from man. A perfect man or a perfect woman must be a complete blending of the qualities of both. That is why we are told that at the end of evolution there will be no differentiation of the sexes. Meanwhile, the process of this integration brings about temporary aberrations which result through misunderstandings and homosexuality and other irregularities. We are taught that men and women change their sex at various incarnations, and this change sometimes produces a masculine woman or a feminine man until the readjustment is complete. It is necessary that these things are better understood. Then people, instead of giving away helplessly to any abnormalities which they discover within themselves and living a life of shame-faced yet defiant indulgence, will learn to master these tendencies inside themselves and turn them to good accounts. When we consider that from the greatest to the smallest, all progress and evolution depends upon the interplay, all progress and evolution depends upon the interplay of the male positive and the female negative principle, and how this especially applies to the mental and spiritual creative powers to which mankind is dedicated to strive, we begin to see how much futile stagnation is caused either by people who refuse any relationship with the opposite sex, such as nuns and monks, or by those who indulge in homosexuality. Remember, this book was written in 1968, YouTube. I didn't do it. The seven bodies of man and woman merge creatively when they work or play together, entirely irrespective of the sexual act, and stimulate and nourish one another in a way which is essential to the bringing through of the creative of inspirations. In the temples of ancient wisdom, before their degeneration, the priests worked with their female oracles to achieve their greatest results. When men and women are brought up to be sensitively alive to this interplay of the forces between them, they will obtain so much fulfillment from that the act of procreation will fall back quite naturally to its normal use. Sex antagonism and other inhibitions will disappear. There will be produced the perfect working unit, built up of woman wisdom strength and man power action. It is upon such units that the golden age will be founded. Yeah, I still think this is indulge, right? Question mark. I still think this is one of the most misunderstood things in occultism and ancient wisdom, If it hasn't been used, and it's just my opinion, like if it hasn't been used to brainwash people or sleep with people's wives or wife swap or used in a way where like Vera Stanley Alder's talking about, where people just remain chaste their entire lives. Oh, that's cool. I mean, you're learning to control your desire force and stuff so you can overcome that, but you're still not, in my opinion, you're still lacking that balance, Men and women are supposed to balance each other out. Masculine and feminine are supposed to balance each other. That's just the way things work. Even the masculine and feminine inside of you. Carl Jung even talked about this in psychology. When you realize that to accept and love your unique self is to accept the anima and the animus, the male and the masculine side of you. To what extent does it matter? But we get so spiritually distracted from the categories that society is trying to put us in. Are you alpha? Are you a beta? Are you a sigma? Are you a simp? Are you this kind of man, this kind of woman? When the truth is, blending these forces together inside you is going to make you such a unique individual that only you are going to know the answers to this. There's nobody outside of you. Anybody or anything can only just study you and tell you who you are. That's all they can do. It's you that will know the ultimate truth about yourself at some point, and nobody else. So, I used to actually love talking about that subject, but then, it gets too simplified at the end of the day. All right, so what time is it? Birth, sleep, and death. So as we have produced to explore life along these lines, it appears to grow more and more complicated. Indeed, many people will draw back with a feeling of resentment. They will say, it's not necessary to know all these things. So far, I've managed very well without them. The simple Christian faith is sufficient for me. And such people will probably hate the idea of living again on this earth. They're interested in neither in the future development of mankind nor in the service which they might contribute to it. They want to fly away to a distant land and just run away from everybody that's hurting them. They don't want to help at all. In this way, they show us that they are possibly still the victims of moral laziness. They're not yet prepared to think deeply or to seek new ways of helping and achieving. They wish to be left in peace and in the groove in which they have been brought up. Nor is it good to endeavor to persuade them otherwise. They are probably doing very well at their present stage, even possibly better than those who are so anxious to teach them other ways. Yeah, it's almost even worse to have the people come around and try to force them to be different, There are plenty who are eager for further knowledge and who need no persuading. So let us continue our explorations with these latter ones and consider more deeply the phenomena of man's existence, his birth, his growth, his sleep, and finally, his death. It's been said that man is born unfinished. He is born at the 9th month, the finished number being 12, not 9. And certain is that the young of the human are the most helpless of all. And throughout this chapter, we'll study the human being in his fullest sense. That is to say, with his 7 interpenetrating bodies, as we talked about before. We're told that the birth of the physical body precedes that one of the other bodies, each one which is intimately connected with one of the 7 principal endocrine glands. We can do no more than touch on this intricate subject here in order to give point to our argument. Up to the age of 7, the average child has only complete control of its physical body, the rest of its faculties being imitative or dormant. In a court of law, a child is not considered punishable until after 7 years of age. I guess in 68, I don't know. After the first cycle of 7 years, we are told that the etheric body is born or comes under the positive control. The ethers govern growth and memory, and these are the 2 functions most prominently active during the next 7 years. At the age of 14, the astral or emotional body is said to come into birth, and this governs the emotions and desires, so this is the age of puberty and unrestrained emotions. Up to 14 years, the child has been dominated by the thymus gland, in which was bequeathed a store of red blood corpuscles by the mother. This gland should become recessional by the age of puberty. At the time, the child has begun to manufacture its own blood, and the blood is known to be the seat of the ego, which can then begin to control the young person who becomes conscious at the time of his individuality. From now on, guidance instead of authority must be the rule. The adrenal glands, which come into dominance at puberty, help to develop the individual driving force as well as the brain power. They're said to be the glands of fight and fright, and under their government there is extreme sensitivity to fear and anxiety. These tendencies arouse a need for some kind of religious belief to give reassurance. So we find that during these years there is often great emotional piety. At the end of the 3rd cycle of 7 years sees the birth of the mental body, so that by 21 years of age the individual has reached an important epoch in his life. he's accomplished the completion of the three lower bodies of man, the physical, emotional, and mental. He has developed into the complete human being from ordinary standpoints and is considered to have reached his majority in the state of manhood. From then onwards, if man develops as he could and should do, every further 7 years will see the birth of a new quality or power, of a kind more subtle and less easily described here. Finally, we come to the magic number of 7 times 7, and man has reached the age of 49. It is here, therefore, that we can expect the flowering of his greatest power and quality. Sure enough, we are told that it is at this age that his higher mind should come into birth, giving him a subtle capacity for the highest and loftiest achievement. The pituitary body and pineal gland should now cooperate to use the sum of his life's experience for new creative ideas, deductions, and philosophies. Therefore, at this age, it would indeed be well if man could retire from all mechanical routine work and concentrate on giving to the world his contribution in the way of schemes for the betterment of mankind and the various inspirations resulting from his experience. As he could still have expectations of life for another 50 years, this would allow him close on half a century of potent fulfillment in living. Such would be the program of the perfected man or woman who is able to live up to his or her potentialities. But at the present time, many people dissipate their energy and strength to such an extent while young that they never reach the flowering of their greatest faculties at all. They live and die without ever tasting the ultimate joys and triumphs of human existence. They are never able to feel that they have made any knowledge really their own, and that they know any one fundamental fact of life, what they are, why they are, or to what progressing. They live always like the man who said, quote, "The only certain thing in life is doubt." They admit their dark ignorance by scoffing at the bare possibility of such knowledge, refusing to see that right down the ages there has been a vast accumulation of circumstantial evidence compiled for their own heritage and benefit. They continue to muddle along interminably in their stagnant grooves, and such laziness makes man willing to be blind to the fact that his greatest contribution of value to the world can be expected after he is 50. Yeah. It doesn't kind of make you sad too when you see people that are over 50, like, not that they have a choice. Some people don't have a choice, but that they're out, such cool and wise people out doing labor. Thank God that we created the internet now that they could share more stuff with the internet, but it's a sad thing to see. It really is. I love talking to elderly people. I always have, because they're always full of wisdom. My Uncle Larry Paul especially being one of them. You know. It seems to make sense, right? So after they're 50, they have the most to contribute to mankind as far as knowledge and wisdom concerned. Therefore, he does not husband his mental and his physical strength to that end. He should realize that the inspired productions of the higher mind give the intense joy of fulfillment, in which there is no greater glory. The fact that many people are half exhausted wrecks by the age of 50 and others much before that is a disgrace to progress and modern education, and one more proof of the prevailing ignorance is that people are not sensible of this disgrace. When healing the sick, Christ said, "Thy sin is forgiven thee," pointing out very definitely that disease is the outward manifestation of wrong thinking. But we have not yet taken the hint. We're still proud to tell of our disease, unaware that we are giving away that unclean and unkempt condition of our minds. In the future, people will feel ashamed of letting down the community by becoming unwell. A man will be unwilling to admit to having a cold as he is now to confess to theft. The present general ill health is responsible for many irregularities in the development of the glands, and some of them do not recess when they should, and so a childish and unmoral state continues in the growing youth. Unbalance of the glands causes some of them to predominate too early, to compensate for weakness in others, and this produces geniuses who are, for that reason, often prone to epilepsy and other abnormalities. The ancients understood the connection between the glands and the subtle worlds of nature, and it will be a happy day when that knowledge is revised by modern scientists. Let us next consider the common but marvelous phenomena of sleep. You know, this is one of the most frustrating things to me in the world. Maybe I haven't found the text on this yet. Maybe you guys know of one or something, but so Vera Stanley Alder and Manly P. Hall both are talking about the importance of the glands, right? They talk about them a little bit, but then they both say in their books, well, we're not going to go into that. But it's so important that science needs to discover the vast importance of how this is to our spiritual development, our physical development, all this stuff. But I've yet to find a book that really digs into it. So if you've found one or a book that digs into the functions and all of the stuff of the glands, not just one sentence or two, but really talks deeply about it, I'd love to read it if you know of one. So there's a vast accumulation of data proving that the ego or individual can and does leave the body during sleep. The blood recedes from the brain, which can then no longer function, yet much mental activity does take place, together with many authentic experiences of faraway places. A person can, during sleep, solve intricate problems which have beaten him during the day. He can also tell the time and awaken at any hour decided upon. He can function in a complex world of happenings, which he calls dreams. But we're told that if the ego leaves the physical body during sleep, he does so clothed in his mental and astral bodies, in which he is as mobile as electricity. The physical body is left enveloped in its etheric body or double, that counterpart of the human being formed of condensed ethers through which the life forces are fed to the tissues from the surrounding ethers. See, you've heard people talk about this too, even that Darius Wright guy. But this book's been out since the 60s. So, I tell you guys, man, if you study, there's no secret information that you can't be found if you're willing to study enough, or whatever. I wouldn't even call it secret at this point. Man's various bodies are linked together by a vital elastic cord operating rather like an electric current without the wire. This cord is a kind of umbilical cord which joins the ego and his vehicles to that part of the Mother Earth which is the physical body. When it snaps, he is born into the afterlife, and we say that he is dead. But this cord is referred to in the Bible as the silver cord. And as long as it is intact, the traveling ego is able to get back to his body as surely as a telephone message can travel along the wire. Now, we're told that the only difference between life and death is the sundering of this subtle link which binds a person to his physical body. A strong desire to see a friend may often take the sleeper to see that friend, who may be either awake in his physical body or himself traveling while asleep in the astral realms. In this way, it is said, many important meetings and actions are rehearsed by the people concerned days before they occur. And this would explain why one often has the feeling of knowing just what's going to be said or done before it happens. And it is possibly in that way that many prophecies are given. In this connection, we should notice the extreme significance of which all ancient nations attached to dreams. The power clearly to remember one's dreams was cultivated assiduously by the priesthood, as was also the ability to interpret the dream. An adept in these matters was held in the highest esteem by the nations, whose affairs were regulated according to the instructions or prophecies so given. Joseph of the Old Testament was such a case. Cheating or incompetence in these matters was a heinous crime. Hosea of the Bible was told that false dreamers should be put to death. Alexander the Great spoke of dreams as the greatest chance man has of acquiring knowledge. Martin Luther said that the correct translation of "he giveth his beloved sleep" is "he giveth to his beloved during sleep." The whole history of the Bible, as well as many other ancient histories, revolves around the importance of visions, prophecies, and dreams. What are we doing about this interesting activity which takes up nearly a third of our living hours? That's a good question. The first step would be to obtain through concentration and practice a clear recollection of dreams. To do this, it is necessary to visualize the astral plane as it really is. This is difficult because once we are free in the astral world, conditions are utterly different. Then around us pulsates the living, malleable astral stuff, which is free from the laws of gravitation, and which molds itself at once into form under the impetus of our minds. If we want a horse, for example, we involuntarily and rapidly build one with our thoughts, and it is only such a horse as our powers of visualization and observation can produce. So we are told that at night the astral realms are peopled with sleepers surrounded by their dreams or creations, which are sometimes ludicrous in the incompleteness of their conception. Apparently, a person can therefore either actually meet his friend in sleep or converse with his own conception of his friend, which he has created. How near he gets to his desire depends on the extent of his concentration and willpower. Another condition of the astral world is that many things can be happening in the same spot without being aware of one another, as it were, the different grades or vibrations of astral stuff flowing through the interpenetrating place without losing their separate identities, in much the same way as when in physical bodies can walk right through a ghost. Here we enter the realm of the fourth dimension, and if we have had no personal experience of it, we can only understand it by studying the thousands of descriptions given us throughout history by those who had the jar of returning from the subtler realms into the heavy vibrations of our physical bodies at the moment of awakening. This usually shatters the memory of our experience, and we retain at best a jumbled and inconsequent translation of our dream. This is where the need of training comes in. We should concentrate on exercising a strong grip upon ourselves at the instant of awakening into the physical body. By this simple expedient, we must soon learn consciously to profit by our nightly experiences. Also, before sleeping, we should tune our minds to our highest aspirations, as this will determine the realms we're about to reach. If the mind is clogged with petty earthly considerations such as the price of food or their bills, shit like that, or a fight they had with their neighbor, its owner is naturally drawn to the same type of vibration when they're asleep in the astral world. So let us now consider what is said to happen when death has snapped the silver cord and the person is finally separated from his physical body. We're told that often it may take a little while for the individual to realize that he is dead. But for some time prior to this, he has been building in the astral stuff the kind of heaven or afterlife to which he aspires. Of course, thousands build a heaven with golden streets and angels playing on harps. These numberless living thought forms cohere by the law of attraction into one great whole, so that the conventional heaven is actually there awaiting its owners. Those who expect, because of their guilt, hellfire and goblins have created the charming reception for themselves also. And by the way, this is also why many people's NDE experiences, some visited hell, some visited heaven, they're all different. It's because they go to the realities that they believed in and created, which are consensus realities. Those who expect because of their guilt, hellfire will experience it. So the wiser will probably have made for his use a heaven full of nothing but golden pieces. The Eastern Pasha will certainly get his paradise of Horus. The disbeliever in the afterlife will have created for himself a horrible void or blank abyss. And we are told then that people remain imprisoned in their self-constructed paradises until they become so weary of the limitations of their own desires that they are gradually freed from them, and the mind is able to expand and aspire to fresh ideas. Eventually, the ego is free to pass through these lower astral realms known as purgatory, purge finally of petty wishes and conceptions, and enjoy the higher states of paradise to which it has learned to orient itself. We have heard of the third heaven and the seventh heaven without probably giving a second thought to those terms. There are apparently vistas of amazing worlds ahead of us which only open up to our understanding and measure as we develop our minds and our aspirations to meet them. We must realize that life on the physical plane is but a fraction of the whole, and that the sage or yogi of both East and West is endeavoring to train his mind to a state of continued unbroken consciousness throughout waking, sleeping, death, and onwards to the next incarnation upon this earth. And this way does a man finally become a god. Boom. That's the end of that. So, yeah, we're about halfway through this thing. And we're going to end it right there. So when we pick up tomorrow night's going to be the secrets of breathing. Hopefully we'll get in a few chapters there. I want to thank you guys for coming out tonight, listening to the program. And I hope you guys have a great night. I already went over. I got to get some sleep. If you guys want to call in and give your experience or whatever, we could try to do that tomorrow night. I'm fading fast right now. Night, y'all. Sweet dreams. Stuck.